This is Kavouras, and this is UNLV Arts Worldwide. We are excited at today's episode, which is our global and international episode. But first, here's our Dean Nancy Uscher. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Louis. How are you today?
I'm doing great.
I'm excited to talk about our global reach. We know that UNLV Arts Worldwide has a global reach, and it really reflects one of our deepest values in the college. And I wonder if you could give us a little history about the global and international engagement that the college has practiced for a very long time, even before I became dean here.
Oh, Nancy, I'd love to. For me, the big turning moment was the summer of 1999. It was Jeff Cope, our former dean, had the idea to go to Edinburgh, and it was going to be a cross-disciplinary collaborative project that we did in Edinburgh. And we took a dance show and a theater show. We took an art exhibit, and there were so many students that went to Edinburgh that year. And what was amazing is the students came back and they were completely different. You know, the dancers, their choreography changed. The actors wanted to start theater companies and do experimental work. So it was a real changing moment.
Thank you so much. It only underscores, I think, the importance of global engagement as part of a 21st century education for artists, for everyone in society, but has so much resonance for the arts. Louis, sometimes you and I have also talked about the sort of intersection between interdisciplinary work and global work. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
You know, Nancy, I've just always appreciated your vision for internationalism in the college and the things that we do, because I always think what we do locally has an impact globally. And then also when we travel globally, it brings something back and it changes Las Vegas. And, you know, I just know from things like our Korea project that the arts transcend borders and boundaries and even culture and language. They become their own language, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. The arts are indeed an international language and very powerful. And we know that our city, Las Vegas, is a really international city. And it's wonderful when we travel that everyone knows Las Vegas. And it really also has makes a great impression, I think, when we're around the world, that we can say we're from Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think even at this time during the pandemic, it's just amazing because Las Vegas, we don't have that international influence of people coming and exploring and bringing ideas to us. Yeah, so.
You know, when we talk about our students going out and transforming the world, I think your point is very, very deeply important about that the travel and the global engagement itself transforms our students and it makes them different. And as you said, once you've had these experiences of seeing the world, and in our case, performing around the world and engaging with other performers, people come back and they're not the same. And that is really, really exciting.
It's so exciting. It's actually, Nancy, it's so exciting that we have 2 episodes that we're going to do on this global topic.
You know, I want to say that when we think about transformation, we think about offering experiences to our students that are life-changing, that their lives will never be the same once they've had some kind of an experience like this. So, Louis, I'm so happy that we're collaborating on these 2 weeks, these 2 episodes that are featuring global and international engagement with our community and with our students, faculty, and others that we are alumni, because we have a wonderful episode that also features alumni around the world. Thank you, Louis.
Well, thank you, Nancy. And this is UNLV Arts Worldwide. We're reaching from Las Vegas to the world. And welcome to our episode.
Human settlement in the Las Vegas Valley goes back at least 10,000 years. At the time of European contact, the Southern Paiutes were the inhabitants of the valley. In 1829, Mexican trader Antonio Armijo's party discovered the Las Vegas Valley and they named it that. after the meadows that were at the heart of the valley. This part of land became part of the United States in 1848 with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. In 1855, Mormon missionaries moved to the valley and built what they called the Las Vegas Fort. They departed the valley 2 years later. And it wasn't until 1865 that ranching began at the site of the old Las Vegas Fort. The Las Vegas Valley remained a backwater until 1902, when the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake Railroad bought the Las Vegas Rancho. On May 15, 1905, the town of Las Vegas was founded by a railroad auction. The city prospered until 4 years later, in 1909, Clark County was created. Things were going pretty well until 1922, when a railroad strike led to an economic decline for Las Vegas. Things looked pretty bleak for the Las Vegas Valley until 1931, when three things sparked a revival of the city. One was a re-legalization of commercial gambling, the second was the legalization of quickie 6-week divorce, and the third was the construction of what is now known as Hoover Dam. Gambling in Las Vegas would eventually become big business, but it started pretty small. The first resort to be built on what would become the Strip was the El Rancho Vegas, which opened in 1941 on Highway 91. It was the first self-contained gambling destination in Las Vegas, with a hotel, entertainment, dining, and of course, gambling. And this set the model for future development. By 1952, people were calling the strip of roadway south of city limits the Las Vegas Strip. There were a half dozen resorts, including the Flamingo, Desert Inn, and Sands, by that time. For a variety of reasons, the legal casino business in Nevada attracted organized crime. There were really three reasons why the mob got interested in casinos: finance, marketing, and debt collection. Mainstream lenders did not want to lend money to the casinos in those days because it was just a risky business. The mob, who knew the business, was more than willing to do that. At that time, casinos couldn't market to players throughout the country, so they had to turn to the mob, who knew who the gamblers were, and get them to come to town on junkets. Finally, in this period, gaming debts were not legally collectible, so casinos who had affiliates in organized crime had a much easier path towards collecting debts that were owed to them. In the 1950s and 1960s, with the help of the mob, casinos in Las Vegas grew tremendously. In the late 1960s, business pressures and changes in the law led to corporate investment and ownership in the gaming industry, and by 1983, all the conditions that had been favorable to the mob were gone. In this period, Las Vegas became family-friendly as casinos started to cater to families and slot machine players. In the 1990s, corporate investment led to the complete reinvention of the Strip and of Las Vegas. The Las Vegas metro region grew from about 850,000 population in 1990 to almost 1.4 million in 2000. Since then, the population has grown even more to about 2.2 million people. Today, Las Vegas has begun diversifying far beyond tourism. Technology, healthcare, and sustainable energy are some big areas of growth, and UNLV is one of the biggest reasons why.
I should tell everyone, Dolly and I were planning a trip, and we were going to be teaching with Cooper at her center and also in Nigeria. And that happened the day before the pandemic really hit and things started to really close down and we became isolated. So one day, Dolly, we will go back. Hi, everyone. I'm Louis Kavouras. I'm the chair of the dance department at UNLV, and we are here today with Dolly Kelepecz, our director of ballet, and one of our alumni students, Cooper Rust, who is in Kenya and has done amazing things in Kenya. So let's start with Cooper. Cooper, tell us about your background and what brought you to UNLV.
I am a total bunhead and always have been. I was a ballet dancer from the time I was 2 or 3 years old. Went to the School of American Ballet and the Hair Conservatory, and my first big professional contract was with Nevada Ballet Theater. where I spent 6 years working the ranks, started as a trainee and worked my way up through the Corps de Ballet. And then I started when I was at UNLV, when I was at Nevada Ballet, NBT, I had always also been academic and needed kind of a outlet. When things weren't going well in the studio, I needed something else to do to, when you're a trainee, you just understudy a lot. So I started working on a history degree at UNLV, actually first. And after getting through all of my history stuff, I decided to take a year off. We had new management at NBT, and I just felt like it was a time to regroup, and wanted to spend another year or two in Vegas, but didn't necessarily want to dance for the company anymore. So I came to the dance department and kind of as a lost soul and said, I need to stay in shape. I've already done my general ed stuff. Do you think I could do a degree, get a BFA in dance? And the department, you guys know, you were there, did an incredible job of molding something for me where I didn't need to start with basic ballet classes again, but focus a little bit more on helping the ballet program progress. Dolly created all kinds of parts so that I got to keep doing Sugar Plum Pas de Deux and Lilac Fairy, but also I got to focus a little bit more on jazz and contemporary. I remember classes with Miss Dale and Richard and Lewis, and getting to experience Hawkins and all that stuff, and just expand my dancing while getting this BFA. And I guess even more importantly than that, even though I hated it, was getting some experience with choreography, which was incredibly painful. And I tell this story all the time, that I was never, ever going to choreograph anything again. I told Lewis, I told you that I would never do that. And now every time I have to create a full-length ballet, like my newest Romeo and Juliet, I just kind of laugh and think, yeah, never, ever, didn't even last half a decade. So to all of you students out there, please enjoy your choreography classes. You'll choreograph again. Even if you think you're a dancer, you'll be a choreographer too. So yeah, that took me to UNLV.
So Cooper, what took you to Africa? And what inspired you to create the Dance Center of Kenya and Artists for Africa?
So as a professional dancer, we always had an off season, and every off season I spent at UNLV going to school. I took extra classes in the summer. Well, after I graduated and I had both my BA and my BFA, I didn't have anything to do that first off season when I had started a new contract with State Street Ballet in California. So I could serve tables like everybody else does, or I was like, what if I use my degrees and go and actually teach English and math in the slums in Kenya? So that's what I originally came for, just for 6 weeks. But I quickly noticed in the slums, there was a lack of arts education. And I just started asking kids, like, looking around, are there any arts programs? And I found a Kenyan man, Mike Wamayo, I'm still dear friends with. He actually was nominated for the Global Teachers Prize. He was teaching ballet, even though he was an African dancer, in the slums of Kenya. And I reached out to him and said, I don't mean to be rude, but I don't think you know what you're doing. And he was so gracious. He was like, you're right. But these kids love ballet, and I've kind of learned
Cooper, I'm interrupting you. That is so Cooper. I can't tell you. You really don't know what you're doing. Let me help you out, okay?
So I started teaching, and I just saw light bulbs going off, and these kids who, they were, you could offer them a snack or offer them a ballet class, and even though they were starving, they wanted dance even more than food. And so then I came back another summer, and then after the third trip, I was like, this is stupid. You can't train on an international ballet level and like get a job. Ballet dancers, it's all for us. Like, you can't get in a company without a Marley floor and some mirrors and some point shoes, and like, it's never going to be more than an after school activity. And that after school activity is something that is so important. Everybody should get to do art once a week, whether it's music or drama. But if anybody's really good, how heartbreaking that, like, so then I got the idea to stay. I was only going to stay for like a few months. That was 7 years ago. So I was going to stay and start this school. That I also learned about a different side of Kenya. where there are expat children here. People get moved here with their families working for the UN or for an embassy. And they used to do ballet at home. And now you're 13 years old, you're well trained, and your parents decide to move to Kenya and take you with them. And as an artist, like, you just feel screwed, like it's over. And so I started meshing the worlds and thinking, like, these guys could pay for it, and then those guys can come for free. And with even more male, like, we bring in a lot of male kids from the slums. Like, now, you know, the UN child is working, like, she has a partner now, and like this like, you know, Joel gets to work with Annabelle, who's they just did Romeo and Juliet. Annabelle's parents are a psychologist and a lawyer, and Joel's mom it has no work. She lives in the slums, and they end up, you know, both, she ended up with Northern Ballet, he ended up with English National Ballet, and everybody won, and they're lifelong friends. And it also just socioeconomic, like, bringing groups of people together that are from such different worlds. Now those guys also change each other's lives. And yeah, sorry, that was kind of long, but yeah, that kind of just bringing the worlds together, it all just worked out over the last 7 years.
Cooper, it's absolutely amazing what you've done. I mean, just on a spirit of creativity and just bringing people together to create dance and to teach dance, it's unbelievable. Now, Dolly, you recently had a residency.
And I want to, right, but wait a second. You have to tell them about Cooper's kids. Like, who are Cooper's kids? You talked about the slums, and you talked about, but you need to tell them about Cooper's kids. Sorry, Louis. she has to
Cooper, tell us about Cooper's kids.
My kids, so there's Dance Center Kenya, and that's the studio, and that is a business, and it has a lot of sponsored students taking dance, but then there's Artists for Africa that does the classes in the slums, and that's music, ballet. If any of you guys want to ever come and teach here, it's not just ballet. They do African dance, ballet, drama, music, and visual arts. And if anybody want to come and teach something else, that's open. So that's 1,200 kids we have in that program. But when we find from that program ballet students, because that's what I do, if I find somebody really special and really amazing, I pull them out. And at first they get to come to DCK, to the studio, twice a week and train. But then after time, if it's like, wow, this kid is a freak, like, they are so driven, they are so beautiful, they are so awesome, and twice a week, you do not become a professional dancer at all, dancing twice a week. They need to be here every day. We can't transport them back and forth. So that turned into, I started a boarding house for them. And there were 5 of them living in a boarding house. But then I started getting involved in their lives. And in the boarding house, they were staying with a beautiful Kenyan woman, but who couldn't educate them in, she only went to 8th grade, and that's normal here. So then I started sending them to international schools because I wanted them to have the best education. So I started raising money so that they could go to the best schools in Nairobi. And that also was a whole social experiment, because those schools had never seen kids from the slums. And now my kids come in, they're like head boy, prefects, all these weird British things. And they're just blowing it away. But then they needed help with homework, and then they needed internet, and then they needed, you know, so then I just moved them in with me. And now I have 8 of them that live with me. They're 10 in total, because one now is at the University of South Carolina and one is at English National Ballet. So I have 10 kids. 2 have gone, and another one is going to Oklahoma to Lawton University for lighting design in August. So there are 10, but I'm getting rid of them, you know, in a helpful way. And I've promised that we'll never have more than 8 at a time again, because it stresses my family out that I don't sleep.
No, great. So, Dolly, you recently had a residency at Kenya and at Dance Center Kenya. What did you discover in Africa?
Well, it was actually my second time going to Kenya. And I want to be clear too, because we're saying Kenya like Cooper is all of Kenya, that we're really kind of speaking mostly about Nairobi, right?
In Nairobi, yeah.
Yeah, right. I think we do that because we, you know, we say in Africa, oh, well, that's nice. Like, where? It's giant. So my experience this second time, the first time was a vacation I took years and years ago, but the second experience that I had was life-changing. It really was. I don't even think that Cooper understood that how empowered I was by the these words, by the positivity, the warmth, the appreciation, the respect, the honor, all those things are what she's teaching those kids. And I went into the slums and I taught one day, and I mean, I had to not cry, because why am I crying in the slums? You know, like, it was just such an emotional, life-changing, made me feel like I was alive, like my life mattered. And you know me, Louis, that's kind of how I roll. Like, if I'm not doing something where I feel like I'm really making a difference, then I'm like, what am I doing? And so right away I said, okay, I want to support this kid because he's really good. And then I'll support these two kids over here. And what else can I do, Cooper? And they're painting pictures. I'm like, what can I buy? Can I buy something else? How about some jewelry? What can I sell for you? What can I do? But, you know, the experience and what she's created, and I'm glad she had the opportunity to talk about the three major portions of what she's doing. And she was, you know, I think she's been very clear about that. And I was allowed to participate in all of them and meet. She talks about the socioeconomic conglomeration. I have chills now, because it's something that we can't, I don't know why, but in the United States, we don't get to experience that, because we're a little bit too, there's a lot of political pull, and it's so pure there. I have never met people that don't have money that are so happy and loving and embracing, and it's just like how they are. It's not, oh, Cooper did this magical thing and you know, sprinkled fairy dust. It's not that. They're just amazing, positive human beings.
I would like to present an exciting international engagement activity of the UNLV School of Architecture, the Mexico City Global Studio in Architecture and Urbanism. The famous Swiss architect Le Corbusier said that when you want to become an architect, you must do two things: read books and travel. An architecture study abroad program is an awesome way to pursue your degree while discovering what is it like to live, learn, and play in a different country. As part of the undergraduate and graduate degree program, the School of Architecture at UNLV offers an intensive 4-week global studio study abroad program. Traveling to see good architecture, interior design, parks and gardens, and to experience the wonderful diversity of cities is probably the #1 most important activity that our students in architecture, interior design, and landscape architecture should do. This is why in 2018, I introduced the Study Abroad initiative of the Global Studio, where 20 of our students travel to Mexico City to work there together with Mexican students on relevant and meaningful design projects. In the Global Studio, the students stay for 1 full month, for 4 weeks, in Mexico City to fully immerse themselves into the other culture. They are not there short term, they're not there as tourists, but they stay long enough to really understand ways and become part of the working and living community of Mexico City.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Carly Pasqualato. I hope that you're all doing well during this quarantine. I am a 4th-year architecture student at the UNLV School of Architecture, and I'm also recently graduated. I wanted to speak a little bit about the Mexico City Global Studio that I participated in the summer of 2019. I was really in it, involved in it through the beginning, middle, and the end. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about the benefits that I received and how I kind of view it as an invaluable experience that I wish all students would be able to participate in. So during the beginning, we got together as a group. I put in my application and I really wanted to attend, or it was my first time going out of the country. So that was really exciting, which is one of the reasons why I really wanted to participate, but also to see the culture that Mexico City has to offer. So I applied, I ended up getting accepted into it, and I was very excited. There were many applications and things that I had to do prior to, as far as like booking a flight, booking hotel rooms and everything like that. But once I got down there, I was really excited to participate and begin the program. Being in Mexico City is something that I can't even begin to describe. I remember the first day when we got to the hotel, it just felt like I was in a completely different realm. The architecture was beautiful, the people were amazing, and the studio was, you know, I took away so many things from it. We ended up doing a project in the middle of Mexico City, which is actually called Loma de Tarango, which is kind of the biggest like green lung within the city left in Mexico City. And so one of our takeaways, or kind of our triumphs trying to master plan this whole area, was to collaborate with a student, like groups of 15 people at a time, both coming, we both studied, or we both went to Universidad Iberoamericana, which is kind of the Harvard of Mexico City. And we collaborated with students there. Like I'd mentioned, getting in groups of 15, and we, within the course of 4 weeks, we had to master plan this kind of green lung of the city to kind of revitalize it, look at the, you know, ecosystems that are going along inside of of its natural landscape currently, and trying to figure out a way to kind of better this area, since it is just kind of one sitting landscape. We wanted to find a way to activate it, and then also to, you know, connect it to the neighboring areas within the city, so that way they could get benefit from it as well. So after 4 weeks, we ended up coming with an amazing design. I remember getting so many compliments on the project, and afterwards they actually had the professors at Universidad Iberoamericana, or Ibero for short, ended up sitting down with the Mexican government, and this is something that they're looking to implement into their plan for actually the next 5 to 10 years. So our projects that I personally worked on, and the rest of my cohort, this actually could be implemented into Mexico City itself. Along with those takeaways of doing the studio, I was able to travel in Mexico City and go to a bunch of really historical and beautiful places within the municipality. I was able to meet some incredible people. I never believed that I was going to, you know, make so many friends actually down in Mexico. I had a feeling that I would get close to students within the UNLV group that was coming down with me. But I never knew that I would be close with the people that actually were on the opposite side of the spectrum, that were kind of welcoming us into their university. I still talk to people today from Mexico City asking me how I'm doing, wishing me happy birthday, all of that stuff. And I'm very happy, and I feel like this experience, as I'd mentioned at the beginning, is completely invaluable. I would go again in a heartbeat. Kind of gearing towards the end, it was a really bittersweet moment. We ended up having to leave after 4 weeks, apologize. And I remember leaving and just feeling really sad that I wanted to definitely come back sometime in the future. But I feel like the takeaway from this was that like I had mentioned earlier, this was my first time ever going out of the country. So I didn't really know what to expect, but I really know now how important it is to travel, to see architecture in different countries and different cities, to make connections and establish relationships with other people outside of the country and outside of the world. And also just, you know, meeting, you know, seeing different exhibitions in the city, getting to know the culture. And then also my biggest thing is that I know now that I really want to go back somewhere, either in Europe or somewhere in Mexico City, hopefully in the future, and potentially work there for a couple of years to kind of really get this international experience of architecture, and what it's like to work in a firm internationally. Again, I couldn't do any of this without the UNLV School of Architecture and I think the UNLV Board of Regents, who helped us really put this together. This was an amazing experience. This was kind of the trial run. We were the guinea pigs for this, but I am so thankful to have been able to go. It was nothing short of amazing, and I would recommend that any and everybody that's interested in this studio attend.
Mexico is famous for its high quality architecture and great heritage of urban design, and there is plenty to see and learn from the ancient Mayan temples to the modernistic houses by Luis Barragan. Mexico City makes also sense as location for us, as it is a vibrant and innovative global city, easy to get there from Las Vegas, and around 42% of our students speak the Spanish language. We have teamed up with an excellent local partner, Iberoamericana Universidad, or in short, Ibero, which is probably at the moment the best architecture school in Mexico. Our students are fortunate to be able to use their high quality studio spaces and workshops and work with professors from Ibero too. At the end of the 4 weeks, There are public presentations of the outcomes with invited guests from the local city government, the profession, local architects, and the community. We also hold an exhibition at Ibero and later back in Las Vegas at the School of Architecture at UNLV.
I think it's fitting for us to look back almost a year ago, actually a year ago as we were planning this amazing production to go to Edinburgh. And I'm going to go around and we see names, but we want to attach titles to the names. So we'll start with Frodo McDaniel up at the top, who comes to us, I think, the furthest distance. Where are you, Frodo?
I'm in Glasgow, Scotland.
Fabulous. And Frodo is a director in his own right and a producer with, is it Rhymes with, what is it? What is the name of your company again? Rhymes with Purple. Rhymes with Purple. Fabulous. And for this project, for the Boswell project, you served as producer, on-site producer, finding all of the locations and working with the, the technicians there at the festival. And I believe they refer to you as the Festival Ninja. Is that right?
Ninja, absolutely.
A fringe ninja.
No, they should.
Fringe ninja. Also known as the Fringe MacGyver.
There you go. Exactly. Wonderful. And you were there for our student Teresa Ramos, who is with us, who was the assistant sound designer on the project from UNLV. Her first foray away from Nevada and away from her family, and she got to go all the way to Scotland for this trip, right, Teresa?
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely worth the experience and worth every single bit. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to have done that.
Well, we're glad you were able to do that. And then in the middle, because I see you guys in the middle there, we have the playwright, the executive producer, and the co-director, Marie Kohler. And
many hats for this one.
What's that? Many hats.
Many hats for this one.
Many hats. And the two Bryans who were the rocks and the leads in these the rock and roll leads in the show Boswell. Brian Gill played Boswell, and Brian Monty played Sam Johnson. And so we're so glad that you guys are here. And Teresa was coming as a student of sound design in the U.S. And we were there, again, Frodo was extremely helpful in providing us all of the specifics. And Josh Schmidt, who is the sound designer, really did help a great deal in translating, because he had worked in the UK before, and so understood what we were getting. And there was enough similarity, wasn't there, Teresa, in the sound system? But there were surprises when you got to the space.
Yeah, there were some surprises, like having a full space full of curtains, which kind of dampened a lot of the sound, so we had to boost everything up. But yeah, that was pretty much it. Other than that, just having to work between the stage manager and trying to make all the edits while I'm watching, while I'm listening.
I'm going to interrupt you for a minute, because I want to make sure that people understand that Brian Gill not only was an actor, but is a professor at UW Parkside, which was the other partner, the intercollegiate partner on this with your production company, Marie. So give us a little summary of what Boswell and the Edinburgh project was about.
Me?
Yeah, you tell us a little bit. You wrote the play. Tell us a little bit about the play.
From up here. I wrote the play, and Norma acted as my dramaturg and director in its first iteration. It was called Boswell's Dreams. These two guys, the Bryans, were involved with that. And that was in 2005 in Milwaukee. And all through that period, and then after it was over, I thought, this should go to Scotland, because if people enjoyed it here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where no one knew who James Boswell was, I thought, well, they're definitely gonna kind of dig it in Scotland. So it just was a little idea in my head that I kept thinking about. And then about, I don't know, 3 years ago, I got serious about it. Mm-hmm. And I
had a relationship with Brian Gill through Parkside, University of Wisconsin Parkside, over several years of work together, and thought, well, maybe it could be a collaboration with Parkside and using students. And Norma was the director on board, and she said, well, how about it's between two universities and my production company. So that's how it started, and Norma was not able to direct, as it turned out, but she was still the liaison with UNLV, and she became the mastermind in Las Vegas. Brian and his dean and some designers and students were the beehive in Parkside. And then we discovered Frodo. Frodo was the MacGyver for sure. He connected it all up.
What's probably worth bringing up is that unlike trying to book any other sort of a tour or run of a piece of work somewhere, the Fringe, you're often dealing with spaces that aren't theatres the rest of the year. They are found spaces that have been converted for the month of the Fringe. And there are around 350 to 400 different venues at the Fringe, all run by different companies. So negotiating, trying to find a venue is it's a Herculean task in its own right, just finding the venue before you then even start dealing with the logistics of putting the show into that space. Yeah. You're talking about perhaps 10 shows a day happening in one space, with 15-minute turnarounds, during which one show has to get out, strike the set entirely, and the next show have to set the entire scene for the opening of their play, and do the turnaround on the audience at the same time. Also while sharing dressing rooms or corridors off the side of the stage, as maybe more appropriate for Boswell.
Right.
So, yeah, the Fringe is an incredibly unusual beast.
And it's not happening this year, which is such a sadness.
They've had to call it off, which is really unfortunate. The first time in almost 80 years that we haven't had a Fringe. Amazing.
What was it like, Brian's Squared, for you to revisit something you'd done before? How different was it playing it, in the U.S. and then going to Scotland and playing it to audiences there? Because you both have, I think it's fair to say both have really strong reputations in Wisconsin, the Midwest, and in other places, I'm sure. But specifically, audiences have grown to know who you are as actors, and there's a familiarity there. But to pick it up and go abroad, and to go to Scotland to portray these characters, what was that like?
Ryan? Well, I think the thing that, it was intimidating on multiple levels. There were lines in the play. At one point, the one that always made me smile was referencing the exact place where we were performing in the play when Boswell and Johnson went to visit an old professor of Boswell's in his rooms at Riddle's Court. But I really appreciated, again, it was intimidating, but I really appreciated the fact that especially when we first got there was this attitude, and some of it was in the reviews, of who do these Americans think they are? bringing Boswell home, and I think one of them even accused us of they referenced the size of our balls.
Excuse me.
So it was wild. It was really interesting, and it was also interesting. And Brian, I think you can comment on this as well. Just the difference between the audiences. What was really funny. Kind of the poke in the fingers at the Scots was hilarious in Wisconsin, and poking the finger at the Americans was really funny in Scotland. So it was a bit of a Like,
well, having lived with a character for that long, we first did it in 2005, and I didn't recite those lines. I didn't go back and reread it or anything, but
yeah.
I lived with Samuel Johnson for all these years. Somehow I connected with him, and so when we came back to rehearse it, it was a joy.
Yeah.
But it was intimidating when we first got the audiences in Edinburgh, because when we talked about a castle, they knew where that castle was.
Right. Yeah.
When we talked about a building, they knew what that building was. And
Yeah.
I had a character who was had a prejudice against the Scots, and he learns throughout the play to appreciate not only the landscape but the people. And so I could feel a warmth coming to me toward the end of that show every night. But at the beginning, the slights that I was giving, that the character gave to the Scots, was intimidating. And we were in such a small space that we literally, if any of us took one more step downstage, we would be on the toes of the audience. They were right there.
Yeah.
Downstage. So one of the most satisfying or surprising moments was when we were in our tech, our sort of day and a half of tech before we opened. Someone from another theater that was performing in a different play, who knew the area, took us by the hand during our break, walked us across the street, and showed us where Boswell had lived. He had lived across the street from where we were.
Oh my God.
In fact, that's where they'd had tea together.
Mm-hmm. So
did you know that, Frodo, when you set up the space?
I was very excited that we got the space we got, because I knew that its history was so tied in with Boswell and Johnson.
Oh, cool.
I mean, I must say, I produce a lot of work at the Fringe, and it's rare that I produce a work that I love so much. I fell in love with the play, and I fell in love with the cast, which was wonderful. I consider the entire cast people that I will always be glad to hear from. But a big part of my job, and I did a lot of it on Boswell, is what I like to call managing expectations. And there was a lot of back and forth in the lead up to this production of me saying, yeah, that's not going to happen at the Fringe. Yeah, you can't have that. No, that's not going to be possible. I'm trying to find various new and diplomatic ways of saying no.
Yeah.
We're very good at that.
Love it.
And the delight on the occasions when I was able to say, yes, no problem, I'll make that happen.
Yeah.
It was great.
I think I was on the receiving end of some of those no's. So and what a joy to be able to take students over to experience this. You know, I think
it was amazing. Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I spent a lot of time, as do the rest of the faculty at Parkside. You know, we are all obsessed with getting work for our students.